What a way to start the pod.
Indeed. Welcome back to Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. Tonight it's a full house, and I'm joined by Sean Conley, Kevin McCluskey, and Chris McElwain. We were talking about it today, Sean. I'm going to come to you first. It's Celtic versus Young Boys of Bern. The Swiss champions not having a great season. Tonight's the night. This is what we have been talking about. European progression. We've been talking about it since episode 1 of A Celtic State of Mind. This is what it looks like if we win tonight.
Yeah, and we've been talking about this specific game for weeks on end now. Like, even I think you've gone back to every game basically since the derby. It's been, well, and how does this team line up with young boys in mind? So, and we've had a lot of games since then. So this is very much the denouement of all that. Nobody's really talking about Aston Villa. We're really pinning everything on tonight. But we also pinned everything on the Club Brugge game, which didn't pan out. We pinned everything on the Dynamo Zagreb game, and it didn't pan out. So we need to be very cautious. There's no easy games at this level. I get that they're bottom of the Champions League table, but they've had a ridiculous run of fixtures, to be honest. Aston Villa, Barca, Inter, Shakhtar, Atalanta, and Stuttgart was the last one they played. The Stuttgart one's one that gives me hope because I mean, even though they were away to Stuttgart, that's not. I think Stuttgart are doing well, but still, they did get cuffed 5-1 in that game. So I'm hoping it's more their recent form because, you know, losing 1-0 to Inter is quite respectable. A narrow loss to Shakhtar, also quite respectable. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to be an easy game. They've had a winter break, so they're going to be a bit more rested. And they do have a couple of threats in their team. So I think it'll be harder than any domestic game that we would have to face at Celtic Park.
And although it's in this new setup with the Champions League, Kevin, it's very much like a cup game tonight, isn't it? Because Celtic know we just need to win. At this moment in time, our goal difference is 0. It's zip, it's level. So any win, anyone will do to it. It doesn't matter if we need to outscore the opponents tonight. We just need the 3 points. We were talking about all the permutations earlier on, Kev, about what we need to do to qualify. Obviously, Aston Villa getting beaten last night gives them extra incentive for the last game so that they can get into the top positions and get a direct route into the last 16. Big John was on today, John Yogi Hughes. He was feeling the nerves. Kevin Graham has been feeling the nerves. How are you feeling, Kev?
I'm quietly confident and optimistic about this, and probably by the end I'll not be so quiet about my confidence. I'm really looking forward to this game. And I think the way you've kind of framed it as being like a cup tie for us is how we should look at it. It's about going out and getting the 3 points by hook or by crook, I suppose, just by any means possible, get the win, hopefully. Take advantage of the fact that Bern's form hasn't been great of late in the Champions League, and maybe they're a wee bit rusty after having the winter shutdown because I think it's affected us previously. And we could look to try and get another Slovan Bratislav or a Leipzig type performance and result out of us tonight. And I think that's the frame of mind we've got to go in to this one with. We are playing against a side that's bottom of the table. That doesn't lie. The results from their side have been pretty poor. I was looking up beforehand the Opta Power rankings for these things, and we're ranked 47th in the world at the moment. They're 245th. Judging by that, and Opta's usually pretty decent with its stats, I think. So, you know, there's levels between the sides, and it's up to us to go and show that those levels exist. And I'm fully confident that we can go out and do it tonight. I do take Sean's points on board, though, that we've got to be kind of respectful of the opposition. We can't go in being completely kind of blasé about it. And I don't think we will. I think, as I said before, I think Brendan will have us primed for this game. But sitting here before the match, I'm full of confidence that come the end of it, but we should be 4 smiling, happy faces here, and we've taken a big step towards being in the playoffs, if not guaranteed a place.
Yeah, there is no doubt about that. Now, when we're looking at some of these comments coming through, I think that some of them mirror and echo the views and the sentiments of John Hughes, Kevin Graham. Others are feeling confident. Chris, how are you feeling tonight?
Well, I saw one comment coming up a few minutes ago, which I have to agree with. Cautiously optimistic, I would say at the moment. I completely agree with what both the guys have said. I mean, if you were to look at this on paper, you know, and you look at the Opta stats, you'd think, well, you know, there's the only thing that can beat us tonight is ourselves. But when you're treating something as a game like this as such a one-off game, and the thing about one-off games is that anything can happen. So I agree. I don't think we should take anything for granted tonight. I think what we're looking for is a disciplined performance. We're looking for our guys to be on it in terms of concentration, in terms of trying to do the fundamentals, do the basics, and hopefully we'll have enough about us to get the result at the end. In my opinion, we can definitely do it. I've got nothing but faith in the manager, the players, and certainly the fans to go and spur the team on. But I don't think it's going to be an enjoyable night the way some of the nights we've had. I think it'll be a tense night initially. The hope is that maybe we go out there and get one, maybe even two, or even better 3 goals before half time, and that kind of settles us down. But to be honest, like the guys, I'd take a scrappy 1-0 tonight just to get the victory over and done with.
A scrappy 1-0 is how you would describe the last time these two clubs met in Europe, over 2 legs after extra time, and it was an OG that decided to tie. Here is Celtic's lineup for tonight. Kasper Schmeichel, having just signed a new contract, starts as he always has done this season in goals. Right back is Alistair Johnston. We've got Greg Taylor at left back. Subject to much discussion in relation to his own contract and his future at Celtic. And the 2 centre-halves are Carter Vickers and Trusty, the American boys. In midfield, McGregor, Engels and Hatate. And up top, Kuhn, Maeda and Kyogo. Many of us predicted that lineup. I don't think it was hard to predict. It was the exact same lineup that we started with against Kilmarnock. Look at the bench. Sinisalo and Bain, Scales, Palmer, Ida, Baye, Yang, McCowan, Nawrocki, the seldom seen Nawrocki. Bernardo is in there. Murray has returned from Queen's Park and replaced Stephen Welsh on the bench. And we've also got Tony Ralston as well. That is my strongest 11, Sean, if there is such a thing. That's my strongest 11 at the moment. I think the big question mark was around Hatate. We were speaking about that today. Do you agree with Brendan Rodgers' selection tonight?
I do. Hatate has saved his best performances this season for Europe. He has been quite dire domestically at points, particularly Ibrox. But yeah, I don't think anyone was expecting much else. But as you mentioned, Hatate probably was the biggest question mark. And not because Hatate has been a bad player at Champions League level, but because he's inconsistent and because Bernardo and McCowan have both had great games at points this season. So I'd say Bernardo and McCowan are definitely climbing off the bench at some point, as is Liam Scales, because, it depends how it's going, really. But obviously the main headline there is Scott Bain on the bench. That's a great contribution to the dressing room. So it's a large bench, and he'll be in there G'ing the boys up.
I'm feeling better about it. I don't know about you guys. Now that I've seen Benzo on the bench, Benzo deserves a testimonial. He does. In 2 years' time, he will be the player who has gained the testimonial with the fewest amount of minutes. Even Filip Benkovic has played more games in the last 6 years than Scott Bain. But, he's good in the dressing room. I don't know what that means. Kevin, when we're looking at the lineup and Hatate, we used to talk about Maeda as being something of an enigma. I think we expect what we get from Maeda now, so I don't think we can call him that. But I would say Hatate's a bit like that. Hatate's, not a similar style of player, but in terms of what you get from him, it's like Samaras-esque. You just never know. Ross County midweek probably doesn't fancy that, but going out tonight on the Champions League stage, this is when it comes alive.
Yeah. He is an enigma. Yeah. So we spoke about Dyson or Maeda at the weekend, depending on how he's performing. That's how he gets named. And with Rio, he is an enigma. He's got so much ability. I remember doing shows with yourself, Paul, a couple of seasons ago, and we were talking him up. If he was playing in the Premiership, he was a player that could go for 25, 30 million pounds because he was lighting things up. And then it seemed like, I don't know, the domestic game got too easy for him, or he's lost a bit of interest from time to time. But again, Sean's hit the nail on the head for this season. Again, his big performances have come in Europe when we've needed them. Against Leipzig, I thought he was excellent in that game in particular, just to highlight one. And tonight's the stage for him. He is a player that seems to thrive on being in the big stage. Certainly at Celtic Park, he struggles sometimes, I think, away from home. But at Celtic Park, under the lights, European night, it's a stage that's set for him. So yeah, looking at that midfield, I think it's a really strong midfield. I think it's the strongest one that we could put out for this fixture, and I'm happy to see Rio in there to see what he can do, and hopefully he is the guy that runs the show for us from that midfield.
Yeah, and it's not beyond them. I'm just looking tonight, guys. There's obviously been 2 early kickoffs, so let's have a look at them. Leipzig at 2, Sporting Lisbon 1, and the other game is Shakhtar Donetsk 3, Brest 0. So 2 teams who were kind of languishing in that bottom section of the group have beaten 2 sides who were sitting in the middle section. Brest were the kind of early pace setters in this group, weren't they? So we're looking at that table, Chris, and we were looking at the permutations earlier on, and the 25th place, they've done the sums, they've looked at every permutation. Apparently the 25th place can be on 10 points, but there would be virtue of goal difference in 25th place, and that's important because of the Dortmund game. What I'm saying here is we could draw tonight and it's not an absolute disaster. I mean, listen, after the game, it would be a disappointment, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But you can still qualify on the 10-point mark, is what the statos are telling us. But our goal difference is not great. So if we draw, our goal difference is going to be 0. We might be sitting in that 25th place at that stage. So this tonight, it's a classic cup tie. You go out and you win the game. Earlier on, we were talking about certain things that we have heard Brendan does to give an extra edge to the players going into a game like this. You think to yourself, you shouldn't need that. You shouldn't need that motivation. But I think, I've got absolute trust that Brendan can do that. I mean, we've had some terrible performances of late. Rangers, for example, Dundee wasn't great. Dundee United wasn't tremendous either. That's domestically. And we look at the last 2 games. I'm inclined to look at the last 2 Champions League games slightly differently. I think Bruges, we talk about that game. Yeah, we should have won it, but on the night we should have won it. Cameron Carter-Vickers doesn't do that. That's not his MO. What happened that night, being completely unaware of the position of Schmeichel, turning it around, putting it in his own net. That doesn't happen, right? So we win the game, maybe not our best 1-0 if that doesn't happen. And then away from home in Croatia, it's nothing each, a bit of a nothing game, really. We weren't brilliant that night. The atmosphere was a bit flat, but we did dominate possession. We dominated the game, really. So I've not really been that concerned with the Champions League performances as such. I have been with the domestic form. But you come into this, it's a one-off. Who better to motivate the team than Brendan Rodgers?
Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, the occasion itself, you think would be enough to, partly motivate the players, and then it's the manager's job to kind of, build on that and get the players, really riled up for this game. I mean, I think it's important they go out there motivated. I think it's equally important that they go out there, with a fair degree of discipline. The last thing we want is to be down to 10 men after 10 or 15 minutes. We've seen, instances like that in the Champions League before. So what you don't want is the occasion to get to the players' heads, but you want it to, as you say, be that motivating factor. I'm hoping the crowd will play their part tonight. I've got, every faith that they will, because, let's face it, on European nights, Celtic Park can be absolutely incredible, even more so than usual. So, I mean, if you're a player out there, knowing what's at stake tonight, knowing what a good result would mean tonight, I mean, what more motivation do you really need? And of course, then you throw the Brendan factor on top of that. I mean, Brendan came back to progress the club, to exceed his previous achievements. Otherwise, there's no point in being there. He's not here to make up the numbers. He's here to continue to make a name for himself as a Celtic manager. There's maybe a selfish element to that. That's fine. Every manager needs that degree of ego and selfishness. But to do that, he's got to have these players on their game tonight. And that's everyone from the goalkeeper right through to the strikers. Domestic performance has been a bit up and down lately. I think we saw a really good second half in the last match we played there. I think that's potentially one of the key reasons why Hatate's in tonight, outside of his usual qualities. And, the guys have spoken about him, but for me, he could be a hero tonight. Hatate could come out here and this could be his night, and he could absolutely boss the game. You're looking at your big game players rather, Kyogo, again playing up front. He seemed a bit isolated. This could be the night where it just, it clicks for him. He gets in, he just has that extra yard of pace or that extra desire to get into the goal. I mean, it could be heroes all over the pitch tonight, and that's, for me, it could be a fantastic night for us as supporters to be able to watch it, because forget the permutations. Let's just get the job done tonight.
think it was Quinney that said on Monday that he had got one of those goals that had popped up on the UEFA's Twitter stream or whatever, and it was a flashback to that goal that he scored against Atletico Madrid. You know, the 1-2, Sean, with Matt O'Reilly. Kyogo, the movement was sensational. It was sensational, and the finish, the composure of the finish, absolutely tremendous. That's the player we've still got. You know, but I don't think we've seen it as often this season, but that is the player who's playing centre forward for Celtic tonight. And he is a big game player. Paddy Lavery says no need for sofas tonight. That is obviously a wee message to Jim Orr. I'll pass that message on to Jim. Joe Hamilton, good evening, troops. This is when we come alive. You hope so. You absolutely do. One of the subjects we've been touching on, Sean, over the last wee while is this tendency for Celtic to maybe look a little bit spooked when we concede a goal. And I'm going to use the Dundee game as an example of that. We didn't lose the game. The Rangers game, that didn't look like a Celtic side. Brendan even spoke about that afterwards. And my frustration with that is that we shouldn't be looking spooked. We should know that we've got it within us to win games like this. And that is, I guess, one of the concerns tonight. On a match day, we say it all the time, Kevin and I, if it's 1-0 down at half-time, don't panic. It looks as though we have panicked a wee bit on occasion this season. What do you think that's down to, Sean?
Yeah, it's been inconsistent. The mental toughness has been inconsistent. For example, the Leipzig game, we concede first, and then we do look spooked for about 10 minutes, but then they turn it around on the pitch without having to come into the changing room and have the manager do it for them. So they've shown that they can do that. But then the flip side of that is the Dortmund game, where they just absolutely fell to pieces mentally after conceding a couple of early goals. And as you mentioned, Ibrox. So yeah, hopefully with our strongest team out, hopefully that's the strongest team, not just due to the ability in their feet, but their coolness in their heads, and that's going to prevail tonight. I hope. I would hope.
We, I was going to say, enjoyed the Rangers game together. We certainly were in the same room during that game, Sean, I believe.
That was a 3-3 game we were watching.
That was a 3-3 game. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that was a slightly better occasion. I'm just looking at the last time we played this team back in 1993. Kevin McCluskey. I don't even know if you were born. That was the night when
the beard was born.
The beard. The beard was probably
10 years old and fully bearded.
Absolutely. Tiger Tim was Celtic's stadium announcer, and he got the sack after that particular game. That is an infamous moment.
I remember the headlines. It was in the back page of the paper. It's like
it was
football happening, and they're talking about Tiger Tim.
So I just think if we win tonight, we're going to dedicate it to Tiger Tim, right? If we win the game tonight against Young Boys, that's a dedication. The Celtic team that night, check this out. Pat Bonner in goals. We had, it's difficult to even figure out who was playing where. Seriously, wait till you hear this. Gary Gillespie, Tom Boyd, Peter Grant, Mark McNally, and Mike Galloway. I'm not sure who's playing where. Granty would have been playing in midfield, I think. Gillespie and McNally, maybe centre halves, Galloway and Gillespie fullbacks. That's bizarre. Pat McGinley, Paul McStay, Brian O'Neill, and up top, Andy Payton and Jerry Craney. So that was the team we started with. Frank McAvenny, one of Chris's doppelgangers, was on the bench alongside Charlie Nicholas, Gordon Marshall, Darius Dovcek and Barry Smith. I think we've come a long way since that, guys. Joseph, you're in. McGonigal, Joseph McGonigal. I believe Brendan Rodgers will have the team fired up. I think so too. I think it fuels Brendan a wee bit, Kevin. Obviously, we're on the outside looking in, but watching his press conferences, as I do religiously, he seems a wee bit edgier during the month of January, during a transfer window, and when people are firing questions at him. And I watched the pre-match Champions League presser, and he was a wee bit kind of cagey, I would say, a wee bit frosty with some of the questions. Not our very own Quinney, I've got to say, best question of the day. But Brendan Rodgers does have that edginess about him at this time of year, doesn't he?
He probably just wants to be left alone to focus on the team and get them prepared for the next game.
You get that impression, don't you? And he's getting asked the same question every week, almost like you know, there's a repertoire, and they don't really go away from that. They ask the same questions. I mean, one of the questions that's constantly asked of Brendan Rodgers is, how do you continually motivate your team? Just going off that statement there, the comment that came through. How do you continue to motivate a winning team? And he must be sick answering it. He doesn't go to Ange levels of rage, but you can see that he's a little frosty.
Yeah, and excuse me, I think it's understandable. Like, we've got games every 3 days, so he's doing a press conference every 3 days. He's been asked the same turgid questions by the same reporters every 3 days. It gets a wee bit frustrating, you can imagine. How do you motivate a team? I don't think you really need to when you're winning. Like, when you're winning, it's like you don't get tired when you're winning. You don't feel the injuries so much when you're winning. You don't make complaints when you're winning. You just get out and want to play the next game and get going. And we've been fortunate, I'd say, for the last year. We've been winning games pretty much, well, since this time last year, funnily enough, because we had that wee blip from Marnock and Hearts, and then after that, kind of kicked on. So I don't think you really need to motivate the players. You shouldn't need to motivate them to, one, want to play for Celtic, two, want to play in front of 60,000 fans, and three, play in a Champions League game, especially when it's one that gives you, if you win it, you get another 2 games when you go into a playoff round. So I don't think he needs to do much to motivate them. If he does, it should be a case of, doing the Tommy Burns thing and reminding them of what they're playing for, the people and the cause that they're going out to represent. And if that doesn't do it for the players, then they're not fit to wear the jersey. Unfortunately, I think they are fit to wear the jersey because they do seem to get it.
No, you're right. And that's how so many players who are of undoubted talent don't make it at Celtic. And I've heard that coming from a lot of players who have been at the club and played for the club, Kevin. They sign players who, ability-wise, have got it, but they don't have that temperament or that mentality to actually see it through in a successful Celtic side. Chris, when you're looking right at the setup of this new group, and you've got your 1 to 8, and it's the big guns. It's Liverpool, Barca, Atletico Madrid, Atalanta, Arsenal, Bayer Leverkusen, Inter Milan, and Aston Villa. There's quite a few teams out of that top 8 that you're looking at and you're thinking, okay, we might get drawn against a team like Juve if we get through. AC Milan, Borussia Dortmund, Bayern Munich. The levels that we are talking about are incredible if we get through this game tonight and obviously the group stage. And that's your playoff to get into the 16s. That shows you how important tonight is, because you're in the land of the giants after tonight if you win the game.
Well, we're in the land of the giants. If we get there, we deserve to stand just as tall as they do, as far as I'm concerned. I don't really view it as being lucky to be there. I think if we get through tonight, it's because we deserve to be there. I'm tired of hearing people talking about, we've benefited for the format and then the new structure. Well, yeah, you know what, but, I suppose we have. But the fact is, we still had to go out there and get the results we needed to put ourselves in this position. And if we get tonight's result, then when we get through, we absolutely deserve to be there. And I wouldn't consider that to be as far as we can go. I think it's Celtic on their day can beat anyone. I've been lucky enough to be a supporter at the stadium when I played some of these big teams, the Barcelonas, the Juves, and you know what? We've beat them, the AC Milans. We've stood toe to toe to them and we beat them. And we've got an incredible manager. We've got some incredible players. We've got the absolute most incredible fans. Bring it on. Bring it on. But we've got to do the business tonight. That's the key thing. We want to show that we belong in that land of the giants. We've got to rise, and beat the challenge in front of us tonight.
Yeah, you do. And you look at that top 8. We've played one of those sides, Atalanta. Aston Villa may or may not be in the top 8 by the time we play them. But we did well against Atalanta, one of the best performances in a different way of the campaign. Now, John Sweeney is in on the chat on the YouTube. 3 points is a must tonight, as we can't be going to Villa Park looking for a point or even 3 points. No, you don't want to be, John. You absolutely don't want to be. Eddie Quigley, my birthday tomorrow, so hopefully an early 3-point present for me. Happy birthday when it comes, Eddie. And Norman Culture as well, you're in. The team are on the brink of greatness. Are we building this up too much, Sean? Because this is how I feel.
That is absolutely, that is absolutely my fear. I remember that I think the biggest one that stands out in my mind was the Copenhagen game. I think it was. Was it Copenhagen? No, or was it Bodo Glimt? I'm thinking of. The one where we equalised with like 10 minutes to go, and then summarily fall apart again. And that was another one where we came in like it was, yes, this is the easiest job we could have got. This is going to be our first, knockout win and blah, 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 blah. And I think it remains that we've not had a knockout victory since we beat Barcelona in 2004, something like that. Was that the one Alan Thompson scores? I can't remember now, but I don't think we've had a knockout win since then. So that's where we're at in Europe, not just in Champions League. In Europe, we haven't won a Europa League or otherwise knockout game either in 20 years. So hopefully this is so it's going to be a big. If we get through, it'll be big. And even just being here right now is big. Having this many points right now is 9 points after 6 games it matches all of our best performances in the Champions League. So hopefully we can add to it tonight. But yeah, I do worry what you're saying, that we are overconfident. But that being said, the bookies are confident, and there's not many poor bookies. I don't know what the odds are in Glasgow. Usually they're a bit shorter in Glasgow because of betting patterns, but we're 1.25 in Australian gambling, which for old money is 4-1 on. So we're quite heavy favourites with the bookies, and they're generally pretty objective about these things. The flip side of that is that's generally the kind of odds we get away to Hearts or Aberdeen. So they reckon it could go at one of those games.
Yeah, because you're never convinced in a match like that, Sean, when you're going to the likes of Tynecastle and Pittodrie. Kevin, you mentioned, was it the Opta stats? We were, 47th in the world? Wow. Did they say
Something
who was
like
the
that,
most successful club in the world? Was that part of that table? No.
Probably not. No, but they'd probably get be on a banned list somewhere if they did.
I'm sure they would. My wife, the Jinx, Danny Boy says, is away to her sisters for the weekly coven. Hey, listen. Hopefully
she's not watching.
Tuning in, aye. We all do that. We've got our superstitions on the big match day and all that. And if you ever played football, you might have had superstitions as well.
Here's one for you.
Can you say hail, hail to all listening in the lucky leprechaun in Orlando? Cheers, Ian Roy. I love that stuff. I love that. And, this might be on a screen somewhere on the planet. And if we can say hail, hail to everybody listening in the lucky leprechaun in Orlando, then we will do. You enjoy the game, Ian. And hopefully you're celebrating after it as well. Henrik McLaughlin.
Sorry.
There we go.
We started to take that off for you. Too many cooks.
Starting lineup was as predicted. Probably as everyone did. Yeah, I think so. I mean, the big talking point today, Henrik was around Rio Hatate, and Pinball says, good to see we have 2 goalkeeper subs just in case. Well, we know why Bainzo's on there. Tony, listen to this, heading to Glasgow tomorrow with my son for the Dundee game at the weekend, and they've cancelled the flight. Oh, dearie me, Tony. Hopefully you can get something sorted, mate. And Aero 250. Celtic's European curse is lifted tonight. Heard it here first. Listen, it would be remiss of me not to bring up the opposition team. Here we go. So this is how this young boys side are going to line up at Celtic Park tonight against Celtic Glasgow. I love it when they call us that. And you might notice a name. I don't mean Pfeiffer or Lopper on the bench, but you might notice a name on the bench. You remember the ex-Rangers player, Itten? Can you remember him, guys? It was
Cedric Itten, was it?
Cedric Itten, the 6'3" striker, who since coming to Young Boys has actually been pretty prolific. 44 plus 19 assists in 107 games, but he finds himself on the bench. The biggest kind of talking point, Sean, has been the fact that they're the Swiss champions and they're languishing in 9th position in the domestic league. They've had 1 competitive game under their current manager, and they're coming to Celtic Park with nothing but pride to play for. Sometimes that can turn out to be a disaster, can't it? That kind of setting it up like that, they can come out and play with a freedom, and sometimes they're difficult to play against.
Well, I won't pretend to be experts in Swiss football, but I will say they are 8 points off the top of the league, which is closer than our nearest challenger in Scotland. So by that logic, they should be harder than any Scottish team. From what, again, also not an expert, but I gather their highest rated players would be Ugrinic at centre mid and their right winger, Joe Montero. So I think that's the ones to watch out for.
Nice. Now, Archie McPherson's burner account has been revealed. There you go, forever and ever Celtic. We've also got Henrik saying this is a classic panel. Well, that's nice of you to say that, Henrik. Thank you very much. Banana splits. I don't know if they're having a sing-song in the comment section or if you think this might be a banana skin fixture. And then we've got Quinny coming into them from the start. Celtic. Now, I want a prediction from you guys. I'm going to start with you, Sean.
2-1. Dies Maeda.
Dies Maeda 2-1. Dies Maeda brace.
To score the second, I don't know. Who scores the first? I don't know. Yeah.
What about yourself, Kev? We've got 2-1 for Sean.
I'm going to go 3-0 Celtic. Pretty confident.
Celtic. That sounds good. Chris?
3-1 to the Hoops. I'll go Kyogo brace and a Maeda late goal.
Nice. I'm agreeing with Chris on the scoreline. I'm not going to predict goal scorers, but I'm hoping that Engels and Ida get on the score sheet just because of the criticism they've been receiving. And for Rio Atati to run the show, let's go to the action, gentlemen. We'll be back at half-time. Thank you, everybody, for getting involved. Join us at half-time on a Celtic State of Mind.
Come on, Hoops.